What's going on, you guys? My name is Shiraz Ahmed, and in today's video I'll be giving you my top 4 tips at surviving rapid business growth, so stay tuned. I will do my best to give you some of my perspectives having run my business for nearly a decade. So let me paint the picture for you. Most entrepreneurs typically start off their business venture because they have an idea, a technical skill set, a service, or even a widget that they want to provide to their target market. Now, this is probably one of the most Canadian sayings that I'm going to use, but I always like to say that building a business is like trying to push a snowball up a hill. On your way up, it's a lot of backbreaking labor. You're constantly having to put in a ton of effort just to keep it going. It keeps getting bigger and heavier to lift as you approach the top, and then at one point you reach the peak and you start your descent. Now, on the way down, that snowball has grown and is picking up speed and starting to grow exponentially. In some cases, it's growing faster than you can even keep up with. Now, does this story kind of sound familiar to you guys? Well, given that I grew up in Winnipeg, which is the third coldest city on the planet, I'm going to stick to my snowball analogy, but Malcolm Gladwell called it the tipping point, and many others have talked about this as well. So this is by no means a new concept. In a nutshell, you eventually reach this point in your business where you're dreaming about, frankly, exponential growth without painstaking labor on your part at the beginning of your venture. Well, now that you have it, you have a whole new set of problems. So the million-dollar question is, what do you do about it? You'll get different answers depending on who you talk to, so I'll give you my perspectives. Most businesses at this stage face a problem that you need to scale internally with systems and staff to keep up with your growth. But it might cost you more than you can currently afford. But if you don't do it, you'll fall apart, and the metaphorical wheels will fall off your car. Well, what are your choices then, you might ask? Well, you could, implement a duct tape type solution in the hopes of keeping it going until literally stuff starts to fall through the cracks. You could scale up and or staff up before you need it. This is expensive, and it might not necessarily be possible depending on what your cash flow will look like. And you can always hope to find that Goldilocks type situation where that right solution presents itself right when you need it the most. Now, it's funny, I've done all the above at different stages in my business, and each has its own pros and cons, which are frankly a whole separate can of worms, and I'll get into that in another video. But when businesses experience rapid or exponential growth, sometimes this can actually end up being the kiss of death if you don't have your systems in place to handle it. So as someone who's lived through it and is currently still going through it, I'm going to give you my top tips at surviving rapid business growth. So the first one I'm going to say is be process oriented and try to not deviate from it. You almost have to have a religious type focus towards it, and it is super important. Now, periodically, you also want to take your foot off the gas and evaluate where you're at and what systems and processes need to be implemented, and or even people that you may need to bring into your business to get you to the next level before you go flooring it again. I also think you need to have a vision, and it's best to actually write this down in the form of a business plan. And I know it's cliche, they talk about it in textbooks and in school, but it is really more for you than it is for anybody else, just so that you know where you're at. Because it's like trying to drive somewhere without a map. How do you know when you're there? And of course, last but not least, get over your fear and be ready to act when you need to, regardless of, frankly, what some of the naysayers may be whispering in your ear. And the reality is that you will have naysayers, and they could be people who you care about and trust, and they have their perspectives, they have their opinions, which are all valid, and it's important to hear them out. But ultimately, like you starting your venture, you have to have a degree of faith in yourself. And it's something that I think that not enough people, and even myself, take that into consideration, and that believe in yourself the same way you did when you first started your venture. So in summary, if you're at the right place at the right time with the right product or service, you will eventually get to a point where you're experiencing rapid growth. And sometimes it can be a bit much to handle if you're not ready or prepared. It can actually negatively impact and potentially sink your business if you're not ready. So you really got to be careful. Now, if it isn't already obvious, this is a topic that I could totally go on and talk about for ages. If these business-oriented topics are also of interest, I'm going to put my contact info at the end of this video. Please do drop me a line with other questions or topics that you want me to discuss, aside from the general financial information that I typically do give. But I really do appreciate the support. Please consider subscribing or hitting that like button if you do find this of value. And until next time, thank you everybody, and be safe out there.